All right, well, we've got a bunch of quotes from Shohei Ohtani that we can read off the top, but the more important thing, Aram Leighton's top 100 prospects, just baseball's top 100 prospects. It is Christmas, like Christmas on March 25th. You're hearing this on Tuesday, the 26th. All three of us, Jack, Peter, Aram. This is the Just Baseball show. It's presented by BetMGM. Peter's going to give you the whole rundown. But before that, Aram, you said this was a massive weight lifted off your shoulders. How massive? Quantify it.
I don't know yet because like this will be the first night where whenever like for example like as we were wrapping this up and for the last several months like anytime I get on the couch and start watching spring training game or March Madness or whatever it may be, it's like okay, now's the time to work on some background stuff with the top 100, just kind of keep chipping away at the final touches. So tonight I'm going to sit on the couch and just be like, wait a second, I'm probably going to go to open up the document to like go write more. And it's probably going to feel really nice to not have to do that. So I'm waiting to feel it, but it still feels like I have to like keep updating it. It's weird because it's just been the last several months every day, just chipping away at it.
Yeah. For me personally, I already hate it because my favorite team is not represented enough. But no, in real talk, you post it on the internet and you get a lot of internet reactions. Have there been any fan bases that are coming after you yet?
No, fortunately, this so far, no. I got one comment, like one tweet that was instantly deleted. That was a Red Sox fan complaining that that Marcelo Meyer was too low, and then that Kyle Teal was too high.
Yeah.
So
can't be happy.
At that point, I don't know what you want from me. I don't know. I don't know what I can do there. And then he deleted it anyways. But that was the only one I got so far. It used to be a lot meaner. So far so good.
I saw someone replied to my quote tweet of the top 100 and said, "You hate the Reds," but they were saying it facetiously. You don't hate the Reds. It's just like a lot of those guys graduated. You got to remember that all these guys were prospects 365 days ago, and now they've all graduated from prospect ranks. Was CES in the top 100? I think he was.
Yeah, of course. Of course. We had CES in there. Noel V. Marte graduated. He'd be in there. Edwin Arroyo was going to be on there, but in the back last 10 spots, and then he tore his labrum, and like that's enough for you to drop out of the top 100, unfortunately, because I got to see how you come back from that. And he was barely in as it is. And, Chase Petty, we like him a lot. We've talked about him, but I'm just not taking him over any of the other arms that we have in the back of the top 100. Reds still have a really good system. We have Rhett Lauder in there, right? We have other guys in there, but I think there's just a few guys that were just on the outside looking in. We also have Connor Phillips in there too. Like there's still Reds in here. Another just missed was, of course, on the Red side. You're going to have Cam Collier just slide out there as well. But again, we really like him.
Here's the deal, Peter. I'm going to ask you politely to not do the MGM spiel because we have it in the intro before the instrumental in the podcast, and it feels like it would be in really poor taste for the topic that we're about to get into right now. Is that okay if you punt for today?
I'll punt, but it would be funny. But I will punt.
It would be in poor taste.
It would be in poor taste. I would laugh, but this isn't about me. This is about Shohei Ohtani.
Shohei Ohtani addressed the media on Monday in Los Angeles, and I am on Fabian Ardaya's Twitter page, and I'm just going to read some of the notable quotes and then get your reaction here. It's pretty much cut and dry exactly what we expected, but here is the slew of quotes from Shohei Ohtani. Quote, "I'm very saddened and shocked that someone who I trusted has done this," in regards to Ippei Mizuhara, allegedly stealing money from Shohei Ohtani to pay off that loan to an illegal bookmaker. Fabian then said, "Shohei Ohtani said he has never bet on baseball or any other sport and never had anyone place any bets on his behalf. Quote, up until a couple days ago, I had no idea this was happening." Shohei, quote, "Ippei has been stealing money from my account and has told lies." Shohei said Ippei never told him reporters had reached out about the bank transfers, said Mizuhara told Ohtani's reps that Ohtani had paid his debts. Quote, "All of this has been a complete lie," Ohtani said. Ohtani said he didn't know anything about Ippei Mizuhara's gambling until the team meeting. He had some semblance of what Mizuhara said in the meeting, and that, quote, "something was amiss." Shohei Ohtani, quote, "I never agreed to pay off the debt or make payments to the bookmaker." Shohei said Ippei told him he was the one sending the payments from Ohtani's account. Quote, "I'm just beyond shocked," said he will let his lawyers handle things from here on out, and he is, quote, "completely assisting all investigations." Are you shocked, Aram, by anything that Shohei Ohtani said?
No, I think I could have wrote that. I'm pretty much like close to a T. But again, like what else is he supposed to say? Yeah, even if he's telling the truth, like how many ways can you tell the truth or deny? So look, I think the number one thing is always just like how available you are to an investigation. You're not doing and I don't want to like get New England fans mad, but like you're not like smashing your phone like Tom Brady, and things like that. Where if he's very available and literally being as open and helpful in the investigation as possible, what else can you ask for? I just think this is one of those things where, of course, everybody wants to hear from Shohei, but what are you going to hear at the end of the day? We just got to wait for the investigation to, take care of itself and then go from there. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that he didn't do anything. I still feel pretty good about the idea that, he wasn't betting. And, obviously I want to believe that anyways, but yeah, I think he kind of just said everything that he needed to say and that you kind of expected him to say, which is good. Nothing bad that may have slipped or anything like that. And I imagine he wasn't fielding questions either. So that kind of made it a little bit easier for just a prepared statement.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily surprised by anything, but I do have to say my eyes did open wider when the gist of it was this was all Ipe and I had nothing to do with it. I think we could have heard I never bet on any sports. I did know that Ipe had a gambling problem, and I do know that the money came out of my account. I wonder if he could have said that, right? But he didn't. He said, I never had anything to do with this. So that's why it really is all on Ipe. So that's what opened my eyes a little bit larger.
Yeah. And the only thing that it makes me think of now is, and I don't know exactly how they show that. And it is innocent until proven guilty, but I do think for, just even in the public eye, the question that I think Shohei is going to have to answer here, especially with him really, leaning fully into the idea that it might be true, but really hammering home the idea that Ipe stole everything is how does somebody not catch $4.5 million being funneled from
Right.
his account? It's possible, but I need, and I think the general public needs a reasonable explanation as to how that could happen. So if there's, maybe Ipe comes out and talks about what he did and how he got away with it. If there's some sort of reasonable explanation as to how this happened, then, I think that'll really kind of help the public image side of things. The one thing that's funny is like, I don't know what it's like to have $4.5 million. 99.99% of the world that's commenting on this has no idea what it's like to have as much money as Shohei Ohtani has in his account. So I'm not going to pretend to know how I would monitor $4 million. I'd like to think I'd catch it, but I just think it's so funny that people are, that don't really know what that situation would be like, or saying like, oh, how could he never catch it? Whatever. Like I see Shohei as a pretty, I would say, immaterial guy. Like, I don't think he's really checking the bank account every morning and doing things like that, but there are also bank procedures. I'm not going to pretend to know all these things. If they could explain that, how somebody could pull this off, then I think that will really help hammer home what Shohei is saying and kind of vindicate him a little bit.
So the other thing that I want to point out is he agreed to a 1-year deal with the Angels last year in his final year before unrestricted free agency at $30 million. We know Shohei Ohtani makes $65 million in endorsements every year. So if that was the case in 2023, this guy brought in $95 million in 2023. For a guy that is labeled immaterial, right? And, is someone that is willing to defer a shit ton of money because he frankly doesn't need all of that right now. 4 out of 95 feels like something that could sneak under him if he's not really on top of his shit. And frankly, it seems like he isn't really on top of his shit when it comes to money.
I was gonna say it's equivalent of like, you guys could easily steal about $200 from me, and I think it's about the equivalent to Shohei's $4.5 million. If you had my bank, I wouldn't catch it. You could steal a few $100 from me. I wouldn't catch it at all. But beyond that, like, he probably has a bunch of bank accounts too. Like, it's not like he has one account. Like, there's a lot of different ways where that money's probably dispersed. Again, this is above my pay grade. I talk baseball here, but
Right.
I think there's more to it, and I just think that people are oversimplifying it a little bit. And
I think so.
if they don't provide a reasonable explanation as to how Ipe could have pulled this off, then I get it. Let's start to be skeptical and kind of wonder, because it is kind of an indictment on Shohei. Just like, how do you not even catch that? But if they can show that, maybe this guy was pretty methodical with how he pulled it off, then, maybe it can be a little bit more understandable as to how it happened.
Also, quick thing, Aram, do you remember the Jared Cosart stuff from 2015?
Yeah, of course.
So
course.
there's precedent for this. And like it's been made clear from the jump that there was no betting on baseball happening anywhere. Like the bookie said that there were no bets placed on baseball. Ipe said that there were no bets placed on baseball. Everything that Ohtani is saying is that there's no bets placed on baseball. Jared Cosart was cleared of betting on baseball, but he was fined a quote undisclosed amount for using an illegal bookmaker. So that is the precedent. Jared Cosart and Shohei Ohtani are very different baseball players. They have very different platforms. Having said that, how much has truly changed aside from gambling becoming more universally acceptable since 2015?
I agree. I think that's the biggest point, right? Is that literally we have an instance where guy just kind of got a slap on the wrist. I mean, and I think you find him however much you want. It doesn't really matter. I think the only stain on the sport would be a large suspension. You know, that's where it starts to get ugly. And it's like, that just looks really bad. And obviously for a lot of reasons, it just sucks for baseball. But yeah, if they fine him for just being tied into it and that's what all it is, then that's fine. But yeah, I do think that the baseball side of it's really important because the precedent is, hey, this guy's not going to be banished from the game. He's not going to be suspended for a long time. And I think the most important key, as you mentioned, is there seems to be no ties to betting on baseball, whether it was Ipe or, you know, Shohei, if he somehow was implicated.
Yeah. My favorite. Yeah. What do you got, Peter?
No, I was just going to say, I think, after hearing you guys talk too and knowing who Shohei is as much as we've seen Shohei in interviews or what he talks about, the fact that when he first came over to the Angels, he left a lot of his money to his mom. Him and Ipe have been inseparable. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ipe had the bank account passwords and
I bet he
usernames.
took care of some payments for him.
Exactly.
Yes.
I bet he did. Like, Ipe, can you handle rent? Can you handle this? And Ipe's looking at an account with $50 million that Shohei doesn't even realize and then Shohei on top of it is deferring most of the money in his $700 million contract. He doesn't dress in Gucci and all these different things. He's not like a flashy guy. So I'm thinking he's putting most of the money in a bank account and having Ipe deal with it. And when Ipe's staring down the barrel of an account that large with a gambling problem, it can get really bad really, really fast. And so from hearing all of this, but at the end of the day, guys, like, I think we want Shohei to be exonerated.
Of
Like,
course,
we
that's
want
going to be
Shohei to be telling
I'm
the
gonna
truth.
try to find that as much as
I can already hear like people who just frankly don't believe what he said. And I think that's what we're here to do on the Just Baseball Show is we're going to give you everything that we have been told. And then as information changes, we're just going to update you on that further information.
Real quick, my favorite screwed up thing that came from all this, Sam Blum, who was covering the Angels for the Athletic. I still think he is covering the Angels for the Athletic. Sam Blum tweeted that from the media guide a couple years ago, from the Angels media guide, Ipe, his bio read that he graduated from UC Riverside in like 2007. UC Riverside has no documentation of Ipe ever going to school there, which is like a weird thing to lie about, that you have a college degree. And I've seen like non-sports examples, and I'm not going to bring the non-sports examples here where they're just like, oh yeah, I plan on going to Arizona State. And then Arizona State says, we never received an application from him. Like that kind of thing. It's just weird to me to lie about that.
Think about it, though. If you were to lie about a college that you went to, UC Riverside is a great one to lie about.
Yeah, because it's not Harvard.
It's not Harvard, right? He didn't say go to Yale, but he also didn't say he went to Stanford or Berkeley or UCLA or UC Riverside. It's a part of the UC system. Still a good school, but who is also checking into UC Riverside? So it's a good school that not a lot of people know about. No one's checking in there. I'm from California. I don't even know where Riverside is, and I'm from California.
Well, you got to do a better job of getting out.
And that's a me thing.
Beside the river.
Think about it. If you were to lie about going to a school, I mean, what a choice. I liked it.
I think it's solid. All right, top 100 time?
Top 100.
Okay, so here's how I want to go about it. Peter and I will alternate notable guys from 100 to 1 before we get to the top 10. And then we're going to do at the very end, Aram's like 3-4 sentence elevator pitch on each of the top 10 guys. But Peter, you first, in like the 100 to 90 range, who jumps out to you is like, oh, wow, why do you have this guy here?
I have plenty of questions there, but before that, can we just talk about who just missed, right? The 5 prospects, the 3 or 4 who you wanted to put on the list, Aram, but you just couldn't find a way to slip them in.
Jack has the complete list that we'll be putting out probably in the next few days. There was a few guys. I mean, Edwin Arroyo. I mean, it was tough to boot him off. The Reds prospect, great shortstop, switch hitter, finished the year really strong, but limited offensive upside. Now with the labrum issue, I really want to see how he comes back from that, especially because he needs every ounce of that power and had made such good strides bat to ball wise. A lot of guys kind of struggle with that. And a switch hitter with a shoulder issue, I'm a little bit more concerned. To just see how that affects him, because it could affect one swing more than the other. There's a lot of moving parts there, so I'm just interested to see how that goes. Rainer Arias, Giants 17-year-old prospect. The looks have been too limited, but what I have been able to see, holy crap, he could be really good. I think that's a guy that will end up being on the list in the midseason update. He is probably one of the more difficult players to leave off. The feel to hit blended with just power projection and everything I've been able to see on the backfields, things like that. He handles much more advanced pitching really, really well. So I think he's going to make a smooth transition to, stateside and continue to perform there. And then Jack, I mean, you went through the process with me. Who were some of the other guys that I was kind of stuck on that I really wanted to shoehorn in there that we just couldn't?
So Roderick Arias, a Yankee guy,
Yeah,
Peter,
Roderick Arias.
he's just missed. Luis Baez was on the last top 100, the Astros outfielder. He is off the top 100 right now. Another guy that was on at the end of season update that is off right now is Juan Brito, the Cleveland Guardians, the second baseman. And then Yanquiel Fernandez, another guy that was on that is now off. Hurt my soul, but whatever. Yanquiel Fernandez of the Colorado Rockies. He's a big piece of Rocktober moving forward.
That one was really tough. It just, the swing decisions were just a tough sell. Yanquiel's got crazy power. I think he could be an offensive monster, but also was chasing at like a 45% clip and really hit the wall in Double-A. I think he can be really good. I think he's going to be a power hitter that I could end up being a big part of the Rockies' future, but with limited defensive value, an approach that really undermines his offensive abilities at this point. And yeah, just kind of just a lot of other guys that are safer with similar upside still edging him out. It was another guy that we had to bounce. And then Luis Baez, kind of a similar story. Hits the crap out of the ball in the Astro system. Teenager who really impressed me at the complex. And this is what happens sometimes when you fall in love with complex players too much. They get to low A and all of a sudden it's a different sport. And there was a lot of swing and miss, and there was a lot more defensive limitation than I thought, which puts more pressure on the bat. And with the swing and miss going in tandem with that, guy that ends up just getting squeezed out.
Yep.
What was the system that had the most top 100 players in it?
Ooh, do we know that?
I think it was San Diego.
Was it San Diego? The Orioles have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So are they tied with San Diego?
Well, San Diego moved.
They traded 2.
San Diego still has 5, and they traded 2.
So it would have been San Diego, but now it looks like it's the Baltimore Orioles.
Yep. How about the White Sox having 5?
Hey, how about that?
What happens when you trade players? I'm glad they finally did it.
Man. Oh, you know what? I think the Cubs.
6 from the Brewers.
7 from the Cubs.
Oh,
PCA,
yeah.
Horton,
Jefferson
Shaw,
Rojas.
Casey, Bush, Alcantara, Jefferson, Rojas.
There you go.
So my first question was going to be another one of these ones that we started off the list right before we even get to 100 about the list. But there's 2 players from 100 to 95 that kind of illustrate the question anyway. So I'll ask it in relation with these players. So Ramon Ramirez is an 18-year-old catcher who's supposed to be due in Major League Baseball by 2027. Mason Miller is 25 years old and is probably going to be the closer for the Oakland A's. You're ranking guys. You talked about a 17-year-old that was just off the list, and there's plenty of 25-year-olds, right? You keep going up. There's Heston Kjerstad on there. There's plenty of 25-year-olds. Like, how do you rank an 18-year-old catcher comparatively to a 25-year-old reliever? And then I have a follow-up question. How does Mason Miller's rank in general change now that he's probably not going to be a starter anymore, but could be a lockdown closer?
Great question. And
thank you.
It's kind of what makes me take so much time on this, because the idea of like trying to compare 25-year-old reliever, to your point, to 18-year-old complex catcher, it's just absurd. Trying to contextualize that and trying to actually do it, but we have to, right? So what it ends up being for me is I settle on, trying to rank these players based on trade value. I wouldn't trade prospect number 95 for prospect number, or not prospect number 94 for prospect number 95. It's the way I try to do it. Obviously, it's going to change, and it's month to month with the way guys are performing and so much variance with prospects. But for me, it's like, okay, if Mason Miller was made available, I would expect a player similar to Ramon Ramirez at the complex being the lottery ticket that they could go get. They could also go get a more, advanced prospect, or you could even make it a different way where I'm trading Dylan Cease and the first piece I want needs to be somewhere in this value band. You could go with a Mason Miller who is closer to big league ready and higher floor, going to slot right into closer, or you could take the lottery ticket, complex player that has a lot more upside, I think, from a WAR perspective, but also could flame out in the minor leagues. I think there's a balance of floor versus ceiling that kind of puts these guys in the same value tier. And then it just depends based on what team you are, where you're at in your organization, which you prefer. But that doesn't mean that, one is worth more than the other. So I think they're pretty similar comparatively. But that's the hard part, is like trying to figure out how those guys compared trade value wise, but ultimately that was like what I settled on to have at least a consistent criteria.
Going to number 80 on the list, I remember we were at the eBay event last year during the draft, and the Blue Jays selected Arjun Nimala with the 20th overall pick in that draft. And you both looked over to each other and said, I can't believe Nimala fell to 20th. I just can't believe it. And then now he makes his way onto the list, even though at 18, but he also has an incredible story. He might be the first Indian-born player to make the major leagues. I think there have been some in the minor leagues, but I don't know if any have made their major league debut. What are the Blue Jays getting with this 18-year-old kid with just the sweetest swing?
I mean, he's explosive for how skinny he is still too. He's still filling out. I think a big reason why he ended up kind of rising up draft boards as it got closer is this sudden power surge that we saw from him as he got closer and closer to the draft, really showing out on the summer circuit. And then you see the defensive ability as well. He not only has a good chance to stick it short, he could be a well above average defender there. He can run a little bit, but I was just really surprised at how advanced the swing was for a guy that was one of the youngest guys in the class, who is a good defender at short, who all of a sudden is enjoying this uptick in power. I think he's one of the names that could break out in a big way. It's hard to label first round picks breakouts, but usually it's a slow burn with these high school guys, not as much lately. But I think Nimala can be the latest example of a prep guy that slipped outside of the top half of the first round that just really flies up quickly. I've loved everything I've seen from him swing wise, and he has a lot more room to fill out. He could really pack a punch for a guy that's doesn't look like he would be a 20 to 25 home run threat. I think he could definitely be that.
Just to quickly piggyback off that question, I think it's easy to ask this question when we get closer to like the 50 and the 60 range as guys who can jump into the top 50 by the midseason update. But I want to ask from then, we're at number 80, right? 80 to 100. And maybe the answer is Arjun Nimala, but who in that band do you think is most likely to make that jump into the top 50 come midseason?
Oof, that's a good question too. I think there's a few guys. Kevin McGonigal, I think, is one of the best lower level hitters, just swing wise. Detroit Tigers kid. I think also like is getting moved off a shortstop by the industry, and not by the Tigers yet. I think more by the industry. I think he can plug in there and be serviceable, even if he does end up moving to second base and be a really good second baseman. But the field of hit's unbelievable. The approach is so good. For a player that is as young as he is, and I just love the operation in the box. Sneaky athlete, a little bit more pop, I think, than people expect. He'd have to really hit, but I think he's going to do that because he's just more advanced than all of his peers. Jefferson Rojas of the Chicago Cubs, I think, can be an absolute monster. He's a guy that I think we're probably the only ones that have him on the top 100 list, but he's physically projectable. He put up really solid numbers as one of the younger players in the lower levels last year. can pick it at shortstop, starting to tap into more power. I was really impressed with what I saw from him on the backfields as well. He could be a well-rounded shortstop. Already has, low A experience under his belt at 18 years old and put up good numbers there, flashing above average EVs. I think Rojas could really climb quickly. And then Bryce Eldridge of the San Francisco Giants, right? Focusing on pitching or focusing on hitting, eliminating the pitching. He's 6'7". He hits absolute bombs when when he's all in sync. He has a good approach already. He's a dude that, just could wow people with the power. And despite some defensive questions, climb quite quickly.
Okay, quick one. And I said I wasn't going to ask any player specific, but I'm asking a player specific. Why is Christian Scott at 78? Christian Scott with the New York Mets.
Because he's going to win Rookie of the Year at plus 5,000 this year.
Oh, okay.
No, but look, he is really unique. I mean, this is a dude that it's a 3/4 release point that really ends up. Usually, when you have guys drop down from that 3/4 release point, you're going to have a lot of arm side run, and he drops down from that release point and still has ride to it. And so, when you have a fastball, you want to just stray from what hitters are used to seeing. Usually, I think a hitter's brain is innately going to see that release point and think run, and instead it's ride. So that's one aspect of it that I think already creates a lot of a whiff in the zone. Then he gets good extension. Then he has ridiculous arm speed. He also has plus command, and that's why his fastball just bullied guys last year. And even when he got to Double-A, same whiff numbers. So it was some of the better in-zone whiff numbers you're going to see in Double-A. Swinging strike rate nearly at 20%. I think like 11% on a fastball is good. So he's almost doubling that up. And then a changeup working off of that that's also plus. And then he adds a sweeper this offseason that's looked unbelievable in spring training. And I got to stop saying unbelievable, overused word, but a sweeper that's looked really good. And then also tweaked his slider that was inconsistent last year to a harder, more vertical dropping pitch. So he pretty much has a 4-pitch arsenal now. He was one of the best pitchers in minor league baseball in strikeout minus walk rate, and now added more stuff. I know he's a little bit older. He's going to be 25. But I think not only is he the best pitcher in the Mets system, I think he's a guy that's going to get up, grab a rotation spot this year. And I think his arsenal, led by a fastball that's borderline double plus, can translate to big league success right away.
The catching position in Major League Baseball has been pretty weak in the past couple of years, but we've seen some prospects come up. Maybe notably Adley Rutschman is a pretty good one. But there's also Gabby Moreno, who was in the World Series last year, right? The catching position is getting better and better. And on this top 100, I feel like it's littered with catchers. And in this next kind of block, there's Ivan Herrera of the St. Louis Cardinals at 75. There is Edgar Caro of the White Sox at 67. Austin Wells of the Yankees at 66. And then you have Harry Ford of the Mariners at 61. So in this block, there are 4 catchers, all different ages, and mostly all different levels of the minors. Like, how do you compare those 4 catchers? And then on top of it, can you kind of speak to the catching position in minor league baseball and how we're finally going to have a top 10 catchers list maybe next year that looks freaking awesome? And we're like, look at this loaded ass list.
The first year we did the top 10 catchers in Major League Baseball was
so bad.
Ass.
Oh my God. We were like, are we really going to rank this guy 8th or 9th? And we don't have to worry about that anymore. Baseball is having a catcher revolution. I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, we're already seeing it now. You rank 10 guys now. Francisco Alvarez, you could easily slot in and pretty high up there. You mentioned Moreno. There's so many young, talented catchers that are translating. And I think it's important to look at, what is translating for those guys, what maybe their questions and concerns were as minor leaguers. And, how did that kind of convert to the big leagues? Because trying to look for those characteristics in some of these other guys in the minor leagues. And there's a lot of different ways that you can be an above average catcher. Of course, it's great to hit. At the end of the day, the priority is how you block, how you receive, how you limit the running game, which the last part of that is a little bit more out of catcher's control, I think, as ever with the new rules and with pitchers being as slow to home plate as ever. So there's not as much importance on that, but blocking, receiving, of course, is going to be important. But I kind of look at it like a sliding scale, right? So if you're going to be a little bit deficient in the receiving category, then I hope you're really good blocking wise, or, you can also really swing it. If the bat to ball is not great at the catching position, I want to see some more power there. And then I want to see some defensive ability as well. So when you're comparing like an Austin Wells to Edgar Caro is borderline plus hit tool, switch hitter. They both have some defensive questions, but I think both have improved mightily. Wells has gotten himself to the point where he's, I think close to an average catcher. So it's a little bit safer there. With Caro, think he's got a little bit more of a ways to go defensively, but I think his offensive floor is a little bit higher relative to where Wells was at his age. I mean, he's 4 years younger and skipped high A. So it's kind of that sliding scale too, but Wells improving defensively is really what ends up giving him the edge over Caro, who's so much younger, but Caro does have a lot of time to improve in that department. Ivan Herrera, I think, is one of the more underrated catchers in the minor leagues. I can't believe he's not on every top 100 list. He's improved every single way you want him to. And he's more of a guy where there's nothing that he's proficient at, but now he's kind of gotten to the point where there's nothing that he's bad at. He's going to be offensive minded as well, but as long as there's no gaping hole defensively, then I'm going to feel really good about that. At Harry Ford, it's a little bit more speculative because Ford, he's so athletic, and that should translate to good blocking. But if I remember correctly, I think he had 20 pass balls this past year. I went back and watched every single pass ball. It wasn't because he couldn't
Wait,
block.
hold on. You're a psycho. You watched every pass ball. You are a psycho at LA.
Yes, I did. I mean, you can. I
That
think it was
just
20. If someone can
sometimes
cross-reference that.
sometimes you go on like a rant and like you say a lot of smart things, but then there's some times where we just got to stop and be like, Aram watched every Harry Ford pass ball.
I did, and it was. I think he had 14 the year before too, but it was in less games. So 34 pass balls and like 130 something, 140, whatever it was. Like, that's not great. But then I'm watching, I'm like, he should be blocking better. That's why I wanted to watch him. I'm like, this is shocking. He's really athletic. He blocks pretty well when he needs to. It was a lot of lapses in just focus. Ball just glances off his glove. One of the most frequent ones was like just trying to stick his arm out and catch balls that were close to the hitter and just kind of shying away from it, and it sneaks by. I saw like 5 of those. So that's something that to me is like super fixable. When you see like a guy that really doesn't move well behind the dish and struggles to get down and shift and get in front of balls, I'm like, ugh. But Harry Ford, you see things that are like a lot more fixable. He's a freak athlete. He works really hard behind the dish though. So it was surprising to see those lapses here and there. And then you have, the bat to ball that's continued to get better and a guy that can consistently elevate. So in a long-winded way, like you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons. And I think with Ford, his deficiencies were more fixable and there's just way more upside than these other guys. And then some of the others, there's things that they've really elevated and gotten to close to big league average, but it puts more pressure on the things that they're good at to be even better, right? Austin Wells, if he's a fringy or average defender, he's going to need to swing it. He's going to need to swing it pretty well, and he can. But if he's not swinging it, he's maybe not even an average catcher. Whereas Harry Ford, I think the defense can get good. You figure he can swing it, but he has multiple ways to be an above average catcher, and I think that's important too.
But there's a clumping of 4 pitchers from 44 to 48. They're separated by Colt Emerson, but Mick Abel at 48, Kyle Harrison at 47. Then you have Dylan Lesko at 45, Jared Jones at 44. Why do you how do you see the Jones Lesko tandem when it compares to a Harrison Abel tandem when you have such a huge sample of Harrison and Abel, relatively speaking, versus Lesko is like thrown how many innings? 10, 15 in the minor leagues?
A little bit more than that. I think it was 26.
Okay. So like 25 innings. And then Jones, obviously you've got that sample, but you've got big leaguer, like opening day roster. Then you've got guy that has 26 minor league innings under his belt. Then you have big leaguer. Then you have young guy that'll probably be in double, maybe triple this year.
Yeah, it's a great question because I think it's one of the things that it's kind of hard to conceptualize, and I can understand how people look at me like, oh yeah, so guy that's further away, all these different profiles, how does it work? Well, Kyle Harrison, you know what you're getting at this point, and I don't know how much is going to change. Meaning the fastball is going to dominate big league hitters when he's on, and he can throw it a lot, and that's going to make him a back end starter at the very least because he can throw a fastball 60% of the time and dominate. The slider is good enough off of that. The changeup has been really inconsistent. It used to be a great pitch, but yes, you could still mix that in. But for the most part, it's fastball slider from that release point. He's going to be able to get outs. And I feel really good that at the very least, he's a nasty high leverage reliever, but it seems like at this point, he's got good enough command and the fastball is just good enough that he can be a big league starter. But I don't know how much is going to change there. Yes, he's young, but I haven't seen, if anything, I've seen him kind of take a half step backwards. So I see that. And then I look at a Dylan Lesko where his fastball averages more than 20 inches of vert. He throws really hard. He's coming off a TJ, which it was one of my favorite conversations we had on the call up recently, where he said, like, most people say it takes about 2 years to get back to yourself. And I thought I felt like myself when I first came back. And then now I'm at the 2-year mark and I feel like a different dude. I feel even better. And you can see that because over the last few starts, he started averaging 21 inches of vert. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, that fastball is already going to be a plus pitch at the big league level. He's already earned high marks for his command. It just, the reason why his command wasn't great, when he came back was because everybody's command stinks after Tommy John surgery. He didn't throw for almost 2 years and you're just trying to get your body back and get into sync. He's always had a really smooth delivery. So I feel like he's going to fill up the zone. He's got that fastball that it may not be as insane as Kyle Harrison, but it's really damn good. Then you have Lesko with one of the best changeups in the minor leagues. And then you have a curveball that he can really spin 3,000 RPMs, but then he also has the slider that he's excited about that he just added that kind of bridges the gap. I just wrote a piece on that. So for me, I'm like, okay, I feel good about his chance of getting close to where Kyle Harrison is now in his like median outcome.
Yeah.
But if this all comes together, he can be better than Kyle Harrison. So yes, there's a little bit more risk, but I think that there's a lot more room for him to be better than room for him to be worse, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then with Jared Jones, it's like right in the middle of those two, where that's what gives him the slight edge on Lesko. Because Jones's fastball and slider combination, I think, is just better than Harrison when you factor in command. And then we'll see if the third pitch comes along and things like that. But I just think Jones is a little bit more of a polished version of Harrison, which, okay, Lesko could be better. But given that Jones is a little bit more polished, so you know what you're getting, I feel like that kind of satisfies some of the risk side. And I think just edges out Lesko, even though he has more upside than Jones, because I'm more confident in him being able to do it every fifth day than Kyle Harrison. So it's hard because it's a lot of different profiles and you got to kind of compare them and kind of weigh the risk versus the reward. And I just think the reward for Lesko is just outweighs what you got with Kyle Harrison, who still has risk because of the command. Whereas a Jared Jones, the command's pretty good. And then he has similar stuff to Harrison.
Jared Jones might not be on the midseason update, not because he's not good, but because he made the Pirates rotation. And Jack gives out 80-1. Guess what the number is now, Jack McMullen?
I have no idea. What's the number?
45-1. Almost cut in half.
That's still very high.
Still very high. So if you still like it, go bet it. I have a quick question. I know Jack just kind of covered the high 40s, low 50s. And Jack, I'll ask this and you can get into the 30s. I just had one question right in the middle of the 50s. Tommy Troy at 55. And I feel like he's ranked pretty high, but I feel like a Diamondbacks fan who may not be following the minor leagues as hard doesn't see Drew Jones and then sees Tommy Troy at 55 and then thinks to themselves, do I know my own farm system? Right? Because Drew Jones got drafted second overall. He's the son of Andrew Jones, who, in my opinion, should be a Hall of Famer. Lot of pedigree there, but isn't in the top 100. But then Tommy Troy, infielder at Stanford, who didn't have like that one explosive tool, but is one of those just grinders that I felt like was pretty good at everything, is still up here with some guys who are insanely talented. So could you quickly talk about why Drew Jones didn't make it and then why Tommy Troy is probably higher than most outlets?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a good pickup because he's definitely higher for us than I think most. Maybe Prospectus also kind of has him in a similar range. But Drew, I'm prepared to just eat crow on Drew Jones. Like I don't think that I wouldn't be surprised at all if he turns into a really good baseball player. I just really struggle to rank a guy who has, I think when I'm doing this and going through swings, it's got to be one of the worst swings I've seen, in full season ball. And there's a reason why they put him, on what was the development list, and then he comes back and still looks really rough. He could easily fix that. And he's an unbelievable athlete, and he's explosive, and he can be a great defender in center, and he can hit the ball hard, and he's still very, really young. But until I see a different swing, it's really hard for me to just rank a guy on athleticism and rank a guy on pedigree alone. And that swing was one of the more rough ones I'd seen, I think, really since I've done this. So
wow.
And it really was. I don't want to say that. It's just the reality of it. And which is almost good news, because if he scraps it, I think you just start from scratch and just kind of just build it back up again. I wouldn't be surprised if his swing looks totally different this coming season, and I'll be ready to move him up quick. It's just, there's something about not being able to rank a guy in the top 100 whose swing I just not only won't play at the big league level right now. That's the last swing I saw won't even play at the complex.
That's
So
crazy.
that's the issue. But
Wow.
I know that the Diamondbacks are going to be on him about that. They're going to tweak it. His dad can freaking swing it, and I think he can get there. But it was one of the more, disruptive swings I've seen. That said, you got Tommy Troy here, who I was expecting to see that taper off exit velocity wise once he started swinging with wood, and the hit tool was really the calling card for him. One, he's a good runner too, and he's a little bit more athletic, I think, than he gets credit for, and that was impressive. That he's going to get every chance to play shortstop. I don't know how if he for sure is going to stick there, but if he can be a passable shortstop, and I saw some flashes of what could be, that obviously helps his outlook. But his exit velocities and his impact didn't really drop off at all when he went to pro ball. If anything, it almost was the same, if not slightly elevated. And with some teams kind of using some I would say springy bats. Sometimes you got to take these metal bat, EVs with a grain of salt. General rule of thumbs like 3 to 4 mile per hour. You can subtract that. Braden Taylor was one where all of a sudden his EVs were a little bit low. The Rays first rounder, and with Wood, it's like, okay, let's see if he can kind of put on some muscle and impact the ball the same. But with Tommy Troy, he impacted the ball the same way. He could run. He, I think, is going to continue to tap into more power. So now I could see 20 home run upside. The field of hits there. Might has an outside shot of sticking at shortstop, and just the well-rounded game, makeups off the charts. I'm always going to bet on guys like that.
You use the term springy. I like the term hot. His bat is
Hot bat, yeah.
Yeah, like a hot bat. I think that's very cute and like fun. Also, Prospectus, the high guys on Tommy Troy, they have him at 35. They have Tommy Troy at 35, which I found interesting. All right, you've got a new best left-handed pitcher in minor league baseball. And you have one that kind of bucks the trend of everybody else, right? A lot of other people will have a Kyle Harrison or a Ricky Tiedemann. You've got this lefty ahead of Jacob Mizorowski, too. You've got Tiedemann, Mizorowski, and Robbie Snelling in that order from, I guess, lowest to or highest to lowest. You've got Mizorowski or Tiedemann at 35, Mizorowski at 34. Snelling at 32 is the best left-handed pitching prospect in all of baseball. What convinced you that Snelling was ready to overtake Tiedemann and Harrison? Was it the durability? Was it like the sheer number of innings that guy threw in the lower levels? What was it?
I'd say C, all the above. Okay. And then just another guy that, I mean, he's a competitor out there. He was a football player, a 4-star linebacker recruit with offers from like every SEC school. Yeah. I mean, he's a monster. And you can see that on the mound. He's a powerful guy, but to be that athletic and explosive, but also have the polish, he's a pitchability guy too. Look, there's so much risk with pitchers that, and especially from the injury side as well. And ultimately Tiedemann's the most talented left-handed pitcher, sure. But I mean, even to start spring training, I had a hammy thing, and there's been some command inconsistencies after looking like he had really good command, and then you have the injuries. So there's so much risk, and I try to avoid considering injuries too much. But when it becomes a recurrent theme, that's got to be baked in there. There's command risk. There's all these different things. So when you have a pitcher who can mitigate all of the things that he can control risk-wise, and then look, I try not to speculate on injury, but then when you get a guy like Snelling, who's one of the most athletic pitchers, such a clean delivery, repeats it so well, that's obviously going to be part of it as well. And subconsciously it's going to be baked into it. But the biggest thing for me is Snelling dominated the lower levels and then even got a chance to pitch into Double-A as a 19-year-old. He was our minor league pitcher of the year for good reason, but I also only think he's going to get better. He was doing that operating more 93, 92, 93 with good characteristics. He told me that he was just throwing the changeup all off season, and he was dominating really at the fastball breaking ball. If he has that changeup now leveling up, and he felt really good about it, and I was able to see him throw it a little bit, and it looks a lot more developed, and it looks like he has a much more of a confident feel for it. That 3-pitch mix with, I think, an imminent tick up in velocity, already being able to handle 120 innings, if I got it right, or something, somewhere around there. And on top of that, just being a gamer and just one of my favorite guys to watch throw. It's the balance of high floor. I mean, his floor is so much higher than a Mizorowski and a Tiedemann at this point, because I feel really good at the very least he's a 4-starter. And then you still have the ceiling of, I think, a 2 as he continues to, mature and really hasn't focused on baseball until last year. Like that was really the first time that he just was focusing on baseball. I'm really excited to see what that looks like now with a full off season, totally focusing on baseball again, building off of a year where he threw a ton of innings. I think he can be durable. I think he can be nasty, and I think he's going to fill the zone up, and it's just a really safe arm.
Only 103 innings. You might have to dock him 20 or 30 spots.
He
Dock him.
threw a postseason game too, so it should have been closer to
110.
How about that clapback? That's a guy. That's a guy who hasn't lifted his head from his laptop in months. He's like,
I've
wait,
got it right
actually
here,
on-
man.
Actually, on August 21st, he threw 6 2/3.
Bingo.
What a call. I got to win as a Yankee fan. Jason Dominguez at 14, above top outfield prospects like Roman Anthony on the Red Sox and Chase DeLauter at 17. And I got to say, after watching DeLauter in spring training, go ahead, Jack.
Real quick interjection, and like, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off for a question of my own because you just mentioned DeLauter.
Oh, thank you.
Got to get this out of the way. How much did spring training influence DeLauter at 17?
Well, fortunately, one, he was, I think, in the 39, 38 range for us at the end of 2023. Then I saw him in the Arizona Fall League, and he got some freak swings off. He hit a ball. I'm convinced he actually punched out. Like it was in on his hands, and I'm convinced it just hit his knuckles and he punched it over the right field wall. Just seeing the speed too, and seeing how explosive he was there, I was probably ready to move him up to the 25 range. And then what he did in spring training was just otherworldly because it wasn't just the ability to compete against some top flight arms. It's also the power. I saw some
Pissing on
flashes of him running into
baseballs.
baseballs, and the BP was really impressive, but it was also Arizona. And I know it's still Arizona, but seeing in games him go like 460 with minimal effort. And I think also seeing the field a hit, which I think is incredibly underrated with him. Like, stop talking about his follow through and whatever. Like he pummels baseballs even when he has a half a swing. Like the brute force and strength. I think it really the big thing was I just continue to have the concerns of like an unorthodox swing be quelled. So I'd say spring training probably boosted him another 8 spots or so, 8-10 spots.
Okay. Now, Peter, your Dominguez thing. Sorry.
We joke around a lot about how the Yankees and the Red Sox aren't a rivalry anymore, but they're always on Sunday Night Baseball, and I totally agree with it now because it's like, how many times do I have to watch Clark Schmidt take on freaking, I don't even know, John Schreiber or whatever. But the last like Yankee Red Sox positional rivalry, Derek Jeter versus Nomar Garciaparra. Do you think, because Roman Anthony and Jason Dominguez are ranked really high, and we saw what Jason Dominguez could do in his first brief cameo, we haven't been able to see Roman Anthony in the major leagues yet. Do you think that, excuse me, this is the next rivalry with Yankees and Red Sox in terms of positions, right? Because they're both outfield prospects. And please say yes so I can start considering us a rivalry again.
That's really interesting because I think it's very possible. No, you could also throw Spencer Jones into that conversation too.
Mhm.
But being that they're stacked 14-15,
Yeah.
I absolutely think so because you have everybody's going to want to compare their top outfield prospect to Dominguez when it's a rivalry because it's like, oh, Dominguez has been, it was the Martian and renowned as this alien life force. And well, we got a guy that from, Parkland, Florida, that's just as good. Yeah. So I think there will be that natural comp. And to be honest, they both do a lot of the same things in terms of kind of framed. And I know Dominguez is strong as hell, but in terms of just, they're not 6'8", they're not O'Neal Cruz, just hit the ball really hard. And Roman's even more surprising because he doesn't have as much of that like block figure that Jason Dominguez has, but he hits the crap out of the ball. He can stick in center field and he can run. And I think those are things that you look for in an elite center fielder. And they're both going to be, I think, franchise cornerstones. Roman Anthony's not going anywhere for the Red Sox anytime soon. I can promise you that. He's untouchable. And then Jason Dominguez, same story. So I do think this could be some sort of rivalry. The one thing with Anthony is I think there's potentially even a little bit more upside if he can elevate more. That elevating to the pull side specifically has been a bit of an issue for him. But he's also someone that hits the ball so hard, that has such a good approach. I mean, to do what he did at 18/19 years old between low A, high A, and double A, Greenville has that monster in left field. And he was just flicking balls over the the monster in Greenville, and it's the same proportions. Like he's going to be able to go yard, foul pole to foul pole, but if he can start to lift to his pull side, he could be 30 plus home runs, high walk rate, all that good stuff. Dominguez, I feel like he's ready, to impact the big leagues right now. He showed us that in his handful of games, and unfortunately the injury happened. So I feel a lot safer, or not a lot, but a little bit safer with Dominguez. But Anthony could end up even having more upside.
I'll summarize what you said. Eat shit, Red Sox fans. Jason Dominguez, top 14 prospect in baseball. Roman Anthony on the outside looking in at 15. Jason Dominguez clears Roman Anthony. Suck it, Red Sox. We're way better. That's
Can
what
I say
was-
that? That's
that
a
was
pretty
That was like an
unorthodox
Ipe
cutoff.
level translation right there.
I agree. That was right to the point. It's exactly what
Ipe
it
level.
is.
I talk about tying into current events. That was really good. Last one before we get your elevator pitch on each of the top 10. It's number 11.
I knew
What kept Dylan Cruz out of the top 10?
He sucks. That's why.
There's a few things. I don't want to overreact to the sample that we saw in Pro Bowl last year. We've talked about how he was definitely fatigued, and I think it's a little unfair to pit that against him. I also don't want to overreact to what I've seen on the backfields. I also don't want to overreact to what I've seen in spring breakout or in spring training. But you piece all of those things together, and now all of a sudden we got a decent sample size here. And it's not the struggles. It's not the fact that he's been a little bit underwhelming. It's not comparing him to Wyatt Langford. Not everybody's development's not linear, no matter how talented you are. The issue is, and you can see the draft write-up I had on him before, I was worried about spin, specifically sliders. He can get over-rotated. He pulls off of sliders. In college, you can get away with that because so many of them are just hangers. So many of them are just to back up, and he's going to crush mistakes. Like, don't get me wrong, he's going to crush them. But welcome to professional baseball, man. They're not going to leave as many sliders up. Every time I saw, or not every time, but as I started digging to more quality sliders, saw Cruz in and out of the zone, pulling off of them. And then that's been the theme so far professionally. So it's validating a subtle concern I had. And he's the number 11 prospect in baseball. Like, let's be real here.
I was just
Yeah,
kidding.
he's not top 10. Again,
Yeah.
arbitrary cutoffs. He's not a top 10
if
prospect in baseball.
when it gets to this point, it's so razor thin. And with Merrill, I can't really poke that kind of hole. With some of the other guys ahead of him, I can't really poke that kind of hole. He's still ahead of Samuel Basayo, who's put up one of the best teenage seasons we've seen, and happens to also be a catcher for now. He edges that guy out so it shows you how high I still am on him. But when you have that one concern and it's only been validated so far as a pro, that's going to drop him a couple spots. But I also think it's more of a testament to the three guys above him just wowing me every time I check in.
Go ahead, Jack.
No, I was going to say, do you think that goes against common thinking because he has better than 20/20 vision?
Yeah. Was that on the ESPN broadcast they talked about?
Yeah. That wasn't even like Omaha. That was like SEC weekend. Like, hey, they were hosting Auburn and it was, this guy has better than 20/20 vision. Can we corroborate that?
I totally forgot about that. It's so accurate. They
So
said that. I don't know why.
So weird.
I mean, know what that means.
I don't know. I mean, he definitely is struggling to recognize spin a little bit. So I don't know.
The burden of having X-ray vision, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
This top 10 is so loaded. Do you think
it's
one
the
of the
10
more
best prospects?
No, I know, but
no, I just had to say that.
The reason I'm saying it is comparing it to other years where
I agree.
Done it
it's
before
fun
the
as hell.
season. This has to be. I think this is the best top 10 prospects that you've ever made in a list. Because if I'm looking at like Skeens and Job and Merrill, and those are at the bottom of the top 10, I'm like, I mean, they could be aces in this league. And Merrill is 20, putting up exit velos, looking so relaxed at the plate. Do you think and you can talk about Merrill as number 10, but do you think this is the best top 10 you've ever made in an update?
Huh.
Jack, are we laughing now at that question? It was a great question. Dick. Go ahead, Art.
I think you're just laughing because I just had the easiest.
Yeah, like super easy clap back. It's like, yeah, you're right. These are the 10 best minor leaguers we've got.
Wait till I get to number 0, though.
Is it Shohei?
Yeah. The interesting thing is, I don't know if there's ever going to be a more insane top 3 than when we had Adley, Julio, and
Bobby Witt.
Bobby. That was like my hair was falling out trying to peg those guys. But to your point, I don't know if we've seen a better 5 through 10
Yeah.
in a few years, where you could interchange a lot of guys 5 through 10, and you could make the case that, I mean, other people have different people.
Well, you can interchange them because this is how you ranked them, and it's perfect.
Yeah,
that's how I would say it. My top 11.
I mean, to your point, you have the best pitching prospect in baseball at 8, and the 1B of the best pitching prospect in baseball at 9. And it's not because I hate pitchers, although I am going to discount pitchers a little bit. It's because the 7 guys ahead of them have the potential to be perennial all-star offensive threats, or have already shown that they have an extremely high floor with all-star upside. So I would say that the 5 to 10 is as nasty as I've ever, ranked or covered.
So one of these guys has $80 million committed to him, and he is not a top 3 prospect in baseball.
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap your brain around, but let's do it. Elevator pitch, like 2-ish sentences on each guy. Jackson Merrill's number 10 of the San Diego Padres. What do you got?
Extreme polish for a 20-year-old to be able to handle center field and already look relatively comfortable there. The hit tool is already unbelievably good. And then I did it again. The hit tool is already great. And then there's so much more power projection there. We talked about, I see like a Yelich type of offensive ascension here for him, where maybe not MVP Yelich, but having that late blooming power. I know this was more than 2 sentences, but I've always loved him. And he just continues to progress exactly how the Padres could have wished in their wildest dreams.
Damn.
2 sentences is never going to work for Arm Layton, and I wouldn't want it any other way, because if you had told me 2 sentences, I'm like, I could do 8. I could do 8. I'll keep it below 10. Instead of elevator pitch on Skeens and Job, what makes Job slightly above him in the rankings?
Yeah.
I asked myself the question of, like, what does Skeens do that Job doesn't? And
bar.
Once Job was throwing 102 in spring training, the answer is nothing other than be 6'6". In terms of pitchability, they both have that, right? You have Skeens, who is like tinkering with pitches and just finding stuff and throwing 2 different sliders than what he threw in college. Then you have Jackson Job, who comes off of a back issue. And then again, another really interesting conversation on the call of just him talking about how it was such a good opportunity for him to just really focus and learn how to pitch. Converted shortstop, hadn't really pitched until like his senior year, and teaches himself this disgusting changeup. Remember, all you heard about Job was his 3,000 RPM slider. That's all you heard.
That's it.
His changeup was arguably more effective for him last year. His fastball is explosive. So you have a guy that's just adding pitches like that and fills up the zone with the best of them. That's really what edges out Job. Also, less tread on the tires for sure, considering how much Skeens had to throw over the last year to 2 years. And then on top of that, just I think Job's going to keep getting better. With how athletic he is, he hasn't thrown that many innings. He's only going to get better. I think Skeens can still continue to improve too, but I think there's just a more complete arsenal from Job, and I think there's just a little bit more pitchability there, which is crazy to say considering how good Paul Skeens is.
Jack, I want to ask you a question. Do you think there's a better young duo of starting pitchers on an MLB roster right now than the Tigers have with Skubal and Job?
You mean like MLB ace and then like best pitching prospect?
Exactly.
That's a good question. Like, probably not, because I'm thinking about the other like top ranked pitchers in this, and there's a huge gap between Job and Skeens and the rest.
Like Cade Horton at 20 with Justin Steele. That would
be
like
no, I'm taking Skubal and Job. Like, I think Skubal's ascension puts that away. That they've got the best ace and then minor league ace.
I mean, Tigers fans just have to be over the moon after hearing that, because when you have 2 guys at like 25 and younger, and Job is just overwhelming.
And dude, Mize looks awesome. Reese Olson looks awesome. Like, they have so much going for them right now.
Casey Mize does look awesome.
So the last 9 starts of the season for Job, and this includes the Arizona Fall League, where it was really fun to watch him there too. 53 punchies, 5 walks. It's a 30% K rate, 3% walk rate.
The way you sell me on anything is you give me the strikeout to walk, and if it's drastic, then I say yes.
He also added this cutter that I absolutely love. And then one of my favorite things that we do is those live pitching breakdowns. And Job breaking down the way that he attacks hitters was really fascinating. The nuance to it and how he's able to optimize this 4-pitch mix. I just feel like he's scraping the surface of what he could eventually be. I think Skeens is a little bit safer, just considering how big he is, how he just fills up the zone with that fastball and what we've already seen him do. But I just don't see how that Job arsenal is not going to be just as disgusting. And I mean, that fastball shape just continues to get better too. At 100, good luck.
Take it. All right, back to the elevator pitches. Walker Jenkins, the only teenager in the top 10 of the Minnesota Twins. He checks in at 7.
It was my favorite swing in the draft cycle. When he was, I still think I can't believe that the Twins got him there. I thought he would go a little bit earlier than that, and obviously it's not really a fall, but still, I think they were surprised to be able to get him. The field of hit is already so good; it's so polished. The swing is reminiscent of Kyle Manzardo to me. I think I've talked about that, and then you have the ability to potentially stick in center field, good wheels, and he keeps adding power. I mean, he's putting up EVs now at 110. He's starting to really continue to fill out. The hit tool guys that have the good approach, the numbers he put up were ridiculous too. And then he's starting to now add that physicality and impact the baseball more. That's a guy that's going to explode this year. And in terms of just it's true 5-tool potential. Maybe he's not an elite center fielder, but if he can stick there, I count that. For a guy of his prototype, he just has a chance to be a monster.
Got you.
The Nationals have 2 outfield prospects in the top 11 overall prospects in Major League Baseball, according to Aram. James Wood comes in at number 6 for the Nationals. I at least caught a glimpse of him when we were watching spring training. The man is a beast. He just looks like a freak of nature. What could he do this year for the Nationals? Or at least in the minor leagues.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a really nice stretch because he looked a little bit rushed last year. He was loading late. And when you're a big guy, it can just really get you out of whack. Changeups were chewing him up. Then this year, spring training so far, and when I've seen him in the backfields, I saw him taking BP and working on some things too, which I always love being able to see what they're working on and then see how they apply it in games. Starting it earlier, some simpler moves.
Quick question. Does James Wood have the best BP of any of the prospects in this?
Ooh. Yeah, probably.
Has to be.
Him or Spencer Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And Caminero, I haven't seen him take BP, but I'm sure he puts on a show. But I put Wood up there with anybody. Simpler moves. Looks like he feels like he has way more time. And we're seeing him make so much contact in spring training, make better swing decisions. He moves so well for a big dude. The approach keeps getting better. The upside is MVP. And now with him hedging some of the concerns, that's a top 6 prospect in the game.
Got you. Evan Carter is at 5. Everybody got a glimpse of him in the postseason. Peter loves him. Peter, do you still believe Carter over Langford for 2024?
So it's hard because the way I bet on Rookie of the Year stuff, right? The same thing happened last year. Corbin Carroll showed how great he was in a brief cameo. Jordan Walker is announced that he's going to start on the opening day roster. And at the time, Jordan Walker was right there, right with Corbin Carroll. And Corbin Carroll ran away with it and went, 30, 40 or whatever, how many stolen base, 30, 50. And Jordan Walker struggled a little bit. So that was my one concern. I've already seen Evan Carter put up a 180 WRC plus and then just looked like the calmest cucumber in the playoffs, putting up a 155. And I just say to myself, all right, I already saw this guy succeed at the highest level at 21 or 20 years old, whatever he was. And now before I see Wyatt Langford play a major league game, I'm automatically supposed to say that Langford is better. But then I saw Langford in spring training. And then I'm thinking to myself, holy shit. I'm gonna stand on business. I'm going to say that I still think Evan Carter.
You can't do it. You can't convince yourself.
I can't convince myself. I really
think about it a little.
Langford is just too. He's too. I couldn't believe watching him in spring training. Like we're saying, unbelievable. Can we use unbelievable for him in spring training?
You can.
It was just a show every day. Now I'm having a real tough time backing up that sentiment.
It's the risk reward thing that we talked about on the back end of the episode, or the back end of the list. It's applicable really at any spot. Evan Carter is guaranteed every day big leaguer at this point. I think you can say that very confidently. Langford, technically speaking, isn't quite that. I feel very confident about it. But what really separates Langford is not the floor; it's the ceiling, which is and we'll get there in a second, but just a little bit higher because can Carter hit lefties? That's something that we're still going to have to see. Yes, Carter probably gives more defensive value, which is important, but I think that's something too. Are you an everyday player? If Carter continues to struggle against lefties, that could be something that limits him. Langford's power is in terms of upside is just a lot more bountiful. And then on top of that, I think the field of hits pretty close, which is the craziest part. And Carter's approach is what really separates him. Langford's got a real good approach too. So that's the part that makes it a great conversation. But I'll just kind of lead it, I guess, to Chourio, right? The $80 million guy. That was a tough one for me. To Carter versus Chourio, I think may have been the most difficult in this top 10 because again, this is floor versus ceiling where Carter, you know what you're getting, but Chourio is a year younger, maybe a little bit more than that. Really showed some good things down the stretch. He's close to an 80 runner. I mean, it is insane how fast he is. He could steal. He's a Ronald Acuna starter kid. He's not going to be Ronald Acuna, but he's like that starter kid. He has a chance to be one of the more dynamic players in baseball. And this is one of those where I'm just going to, the upside is too tantalizing. Yeah. In a world where we're doing a draft or you're picking your prospects in order and I have the fourth pick, I'm betting on the upside of Chourio, even if it could bite me in the butt over the safety of Carter.
So that's interesting that you say that was the hardest decision within the top 10 because it feels like the interchangeable piece of the top 10 across the industry is 2 through 4. How do you assort Langford, Caminero, and Chourio? And you're saying that 4 and 5 were the hardest. So you're lumping Carter in on that tier. I don't even want to call, like, spoiler alert, Jackson Holiday. I don't even want to call Jackson Holiday like alone in tier 1. Because I feel like 2 through 4 are also in tier 1 with Holiday, no?
Call it the unbelievable tier.
But like
literally,
Call it the unbelievable tier.
If you look at future value, Holiday is a 70, Langford's a 70, Junior Caminero is a 65. So for me, it's 1A, 1B with Langford and Holiday, and then
and then you've got that clumping of 3.
Carter, and even Wood, I think you could throw into that conversation. Then Jenkins, I think it's just a little bit further off. We haven't seen enough yet.
Yeah.
For me, what Langford has now shown from an approach standpoint, from power, from the hit tool perspective as well. Holiday, if Langford was the same age as Holiday, Langford's a top prospect in baseball. But obviously, there's the big part of what makes Holiday so incredible is that he's 20. And I think right around the same time in Langford's career, he was trying to fight for ABs going into his sophomore season.
Yeah.
That's the craziest part. He had 4 ABs as a freshman. So that's the interesting aspect of it. But with Caminero, it's kind of separating the tiers. Caminero to Langford, the difference really is Caminero has to hit a lot of home runs to be the all-star that we're projecting here. And I think he will hit a lot of home runs. His exit velocities were tops in the minor leagues. Langford, he could hit 15 home runs this year and still be a monster. It's the Paul Goldschmidt thing where he doesn't need to hit 30 home runs to be impactful. He's going to steal some bags. Yeah, we'll see how the defense progresses. I think he's too athletic to not be a good defender in a corner. He's not going to need to play much defense this year, but I think there's a lot more defensive value down the line than you're going to get with Junior Caminero at this point. But Langford could be a guy that I just see hitting way more doubles. I think Caminero shockingly did not hit that many doubles last year. It's a little feast or famine for him, even though the bat to ball is not bad for a guy with as much power as him. But Langford, I just think there's more ways that he can impact the game, and he could get to a 135 WRC plus without hitting 30 homers. Caminero, the only way he's getting to a 130, 140 WRC plus is with 30 pumps.
So as we get to the number 1 overall prospect, I noticed that Jackson Holiday ranks really, really high in your new way of grading, and that is plate discipline, something that other prospect lists don't have, right? And I'm looking at all of these guys, right, when we're talking about the unbelievable tier, right? Maybe the 70 future value. And Langford is 60-60 in terms of plate discipline. But guys like Junior Caminero, guys like Jackson Chorio, they're more 40, 45. And then I see Jackson Holiday 70, 70. So talk about why Jackson Holiday is the number one overall prospect while also touching on your new way of grading these guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I would have forgot. Raw power and game power was how we used to, was the two slots there. We still have game power, but we do present and future value. So like for Jackson Holiday, his present power is average, but I feel very confident he's going to grow into above average power. That's why it's 45 present, 55 future. So I felt that raw power, present, future, and then game power, present, future was kind of redundant when it's implied with the present, future of game power. Plate discipline is important because it's one of the things I look at as much as anything. Swing decisions are one of the best predictors of minor league success for young players and also major league success as guys make that jump. And hit tool and plate discipline are two separate things. So there was a lot of times where, I want to put a 60 hit tool, bat to ball wise, Jackson Chorio is a plus hitter, but he undermines that with a below average approach. Yeah. I don't want to mislead people by saying, hey, the hit tool is actually kind of above average because the approach undermines it, because he can improve the approach. It's a lot harder to improve a hit tool. And that was something that when I had the Brewers hitting coordinator, Brenton Telchiaro, on, he was talking about how Chorio just didn't even really realize how much it can help him to just be more selective. He wanted to make an impact. He knew that he was one of the top prospects in baseball. He was named number 1 by Baseball America, felt that, and went up there just wanting to swing. And sometimes it's that simple. And that's why I wanted to bake in the plate discipline. What makes Jackson Holiday so incredible, yes, the hit tool is great, but he's not an 80. He's not a I hate to bring him up, but he's not like a Wander Franco level like hit tool guy. He's not an 80 hit tool. It's not 95% in zone contact. He's not Stephen Kwan with the bat to ball. He's really good. But what makes him able to make these climbs and continue to just fly up the ranks is that he pairs a plus hit tool with elite plate discipline, meaning he always has a good approach. His pitch recognition is unbelievable. There you go again. And I think building on that, he's somebody that you're just not going to be able to take advantage of. Guys get to double AAA and these more experienced pitchers, they just pick them apart. You can't do that with Holiday. That's why he's going to be, I think, make a pretty easy transition into the big leagues. And that's why it blends with his hit tool to make him a really high floor bat. And that's why I'm excited about the plate discipline aspect. Guy walked, and that's a big reason why he climbs so quickly. When do you see guys making such a smooth transition from low A, high A, double A, triple A? Of course, it's the feel to hit, but it's also the approach, because there's been some really good bat to ball guys who still get picked apart at the upper levels because the approach kind of unravels them and undermines their abilities.
My last question on the top 100. So on the top 100 prospects list, Evan Carter is at number 5, Jackson Chorio at number 4, Junior Caminero at 3, Wyatt Langford at 2, and Jackson Holiday at 1. All of those guys are probably going to be making a big league impact sooner rather than later. And most likely by the midseason update, they will have all graduated. So who's the next number 1 prospect in the next update?
I'd go James Wood. I think he's going to have a little bit more time. He's going to ride this momentum and now get a second taste of double A and I think put up some really good numbers. Cut down on the chase a little bit, which we've already seen. He's 6'7", he can run. He's got power, and he's something clicked for him here. I think it's gonna be James Wood, and Jackson Jobe might be right there too if he gets off to a hot start. And I can't tell you the last time I don't know if I've ever ranked a pitching prospect number 1, but Jobe could be right there too. And don't sleep on Walker Jenkins, but Wood just has a little bit more of a head start.
That's all I got. Jack, you got anything else?
That's all I got, man. This is, I guess, a consummation of a lot of hard work and a lot of hours, like a lot of hours. So good job.
Hours. Yeah.
Thank you guys as always for teeing me up and bringing out all of the thoughts that I may not have brought out on my own and asking great questions. It's always fun for me to be able to answer that and go through the list with you guys.
So make sure to go check out Arm's Top 100 Prospects on justbaseball.com. Also, make sure to go tune into the Call Up podcast hosted by Arm and Jack, where they go more in depth into each individual player. Just like Jack said, they've already done 100 to 86, and then there's 85, I assume, to 70, and you'll get all of those. So if you want more in-depth analysis, definitely go read the write-ups or listen to the both of these guys break them down on the Call Up tomorrow. My top 100 players. Now, it's going to be more them grilling me, and I'm very, very excited because Arum's much more in depth, incredible list. Mine's perfect, but there will be changes to it because Major League Baseball players, there's much more of an opinion. It's much weirder to rank a 31-year-old
They're all
reliever.
amazing.
They're all the best players already. So we're going to be using the term unbelievable a lot. Probably them when they say it's unbelievable that you have this guy ranked above this guy. So make sure to stay tuned for tomorrow's episode on the Just Baseball show, but definitely go make sure to go check out the top 100 on the Call Up and on justbaseball.com, and make sure to get yourself some Just Baseball merch. You know me, I'm rocking my Just Baseball merch. It doesn't look like Arm is right now. Jack? Just Baseball merch. Go get yours in the episode description. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on YouTube by hitting that big red button. It's free. And also, if you leave a 5-star review on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, we'd really, really appreciate it. Back to 5 days a week for the rest of the MLB season. Hopefully you make the Just Baseball show your go-to baseball podcast for the entire year and beyond. For Jack McMullen, that's Arm Lane, and I'm Peter Apple. And with that, thank you, everybody.